Hello and welcome to the Sandeep Unnithan Show, your weekly dose of defense, geopolitics, and much, much more. Today I have with me on my show Lieutenant General Ajay Kumar Suri. General Suri was former Director General of the Army Aviation Corps. General Suri, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. And it's such a pleasure to be with you here today. And I'm sure we'll have a great conversation as we go along.
Looking forward to that, General Suri.
Thank you.
I have so many questions to ask you, but I'm very aware of the fact that, Army aviation is such a vast, it's like an ocean, literally. And it's one of the youngest arms as well of the Indian Army. You're heading into your 40th year this year, right?
Absolutely.
40th year of your raising, 1986. 1st of November.
Correct.
1st of
Very
November,
true, very
1986. And you've headed this amazing organization. And of course, someone who's covered defense, my heart swells with pride when I see the Army Aviation Corps helicopters. They're the first on the scene. Any disaster, any calamity, we see AAC choppers there, and there's a sense of everything's all's well. But I want to ask you about this other aspect of the Army Aviation Corps. You've got some very big teeth in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The Apaches have finally arrived in July of this year. The first two Apaches have arrived, and there are a few more in the pipeline. Tell us about the Army Aviation Corps' helicopter gunships, the armed hepters as they're called.
Yeah.
Why the Apaches? Why in Jodhpur?
Okay. Firstly, Sandeep, thanks for saying such good words about the Corps which I headed and which is very, very close to my heart.
Yes.
Army Aviation, as we all know, is about 39 years old now, the youngest arm of the Indian Army, a fledgling corps, but the kind of job it does, I think, is phenomenal, and no other arm in the Indian Army can replicate it.
Yes.
And coming straight to your question on attack helicopters, they form one part of the corps.
Right.
I'll maybe in some other question of yours, I'll be able to cover that. The attack helicopters are going to be of three types in Army Aviation Corps.
Right.
One is the Rudras, which we already have. Second is the Prachands, which again Army Aviation Corps has got.
Right.
And last, what we've just got recently, three of them. I'll correct you, not two. We've got three of them.
Three.
The Apaches. Yes. And finally, the three more are going to come by end of the year. Now, why three different types?
Right.
So we have to understand, we operate in conventional operations in high altitude, in the plains, and in the deserts.
Right.
So for high altitudes, the Prachands are going to be used because of their more utility in that altitude.
Right.
And for deserts, it's primarily the Apache helicopters which are going to be utilized.
Right.
And in the plains and also in the desert sector, the Rudras are going to be utilized.
Right.
And the Apaches, as we all know, are the finest attack helicopters in the world.
Right.
They are the best in their class. And primarily they're anti-tank helicopters.
Right.
So their utility in the desert terrain is going to be great. And that is the reason why the unit which has already been raised is going to be based at Jodhpur, so that they are closer to their operational area.
Right. So they'll form part of the armored spearhead.
They'll form part of the armored formations which are there.
Right.
And as well as the Southern Command, which, operations operations in the desert theater.
Right. Of course. So, here's the question that everyone always asks. I'm sure you've been asked this many times. Why only 6 Apaches? 6 is not a number.
Okay. Yeah, I, tend to agree with you to an extent. But then you have to also realize that Indian Air Force is already holding 22 Apaches.
22, yes.
6 have come to the Army. So the total number is going to be, we'll not talk of 6 and 22.
Right.
It's, say, about 28.
Right.
And if I were to, give you some numbers, perhaps the total requirement of helicopters of this kind would be, say, around maybe 35 to 40 or so.
Right.
And some more may come or may not come. But initially, the plan was to get some more than 6. Because 6, to my mind, also is not a number which is easily sustainable in terms of serviceability, in terms of maintainability. But then keeping the costs in mind and the fact that Prachand has also come, I think somewhere we will be able to strike a balance with these numbers. And the bottom line remains that all the Apache helicopters are going to be utilized together.
Right.
And so similar, the concept of operations, the concept of maintenance
Right.
and servicing is going to emanate as time progresses.
Right. So, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. But one thing that jumped out at me was 28 helicopters, you said that, right?
Correct.
In the spirit of jointmanship.
Yes.
And you're not looking at single service inventories.
No,
That's a good, that's a good sign.
And with the theaterization going to take place and the kind of jointmanship which is already started, I think we need to now look at these 28 together as to how to employ them. And if I may say so, even the 22 which are presently being manned and operated by the Indian Air Force, for operations they come under the Indian Army only.
Right. Of course, all the tasking would be
tasking is through the Indian Army.
Through the Indian Army. So how would you employ these 28 hectares? I mean, would you need a separate concept of operations, because they are a very different class of helicopters, different from what we've operated in the past?
Absolutely. They I would say they are actually strategic assets.
Right.
And they're best employed together. Right. So whichever way, and primarily they're more suited for, the plains and the desert terrain.
Right.
And they're not so well suited for high altitude. So it is best to employ them along with strike corps.
Right.
And we all know how these strike corps are employed.
Yes.
And in the scheme of things, if they're all employed together as part of the operations which are envisaged by the armed forces, that is both Indian Army and the Indian Air Force, I'm sure they will be able to produce the results in the anti-tank warfare for which they are primarily meant.
Right. But cost is another issue there, right? I mean, that's the reason that the Army cut down its requirements.
The cost is, if I use the word, it is tending towards exorbitant. They're very high cost aircrafts.
Yes.
And because along with the aircraft, we've also contracted the ammunition.
Right.
Whether it is the missiles, the rockets, the guns, ammunition.
Yes.
So then the cost has definitely gone up.
Right.
Because without the weapons, the aircraft is of no use.
That's right.
And the aircraft which have come, that is longbows, they are the best even amongst Apaches, because the kind of fire control radars they've got, the target acquisition and designation systems that they have is very, very high class.
Right. But I'm very conscious of the fact that the Apache requirement has been with the Indian Army and the Air Force for almost 2 decades. You started projecting it in the late 2000s. And of course, now you have the spirit of Atmanirbhar, which is about buying and building your own equipment. Have you had a rethink? I mean, you hinted at that. Have you had a rethink in these numbers of imported machines when you have your own Rudras and you have your own Prachands, and you have 6,000 hours on these machines?
See, the numbers, as I said, what ballpark figure we... for all these strike corps, you would require around 35 to 40 of these machines.
Right.
So right now, if we have 28, the shortfall does exist.
Right.
And to an extent, it is being made up by the Air Force, which is holding the Mi-24s and Mi-25s.
Right.
But when they go for upgrades or when they get phased out, because remember, they're almost 30 to 40 years old, then there's going to be a void. So that void would definitely need to be filled up. Whether it is filled up by, Prachand, which is being made by HAL, or maybe getting some more Apaches is what we have to wait and watch.
Right. So, I mean, back to, you've got 6,000 hours on all these machines, the Cheetahs and the Dhruvs and the Rudras as well. How do you rate the Apache? Have you flown in one of these machines, and how do you?
In fact, I've flown all the aircraft which Indian Army has got. In addition, I've flown a couple of other aircrafts also, and I was fortunate to fly the Apaches when I went to US when in one of the project management reviews. And I've flown it, and I found
steered the procurement.
When the procurement was being done, and the contract was signed when I was the Director General. So I got an opportunity to fly the Apache also, and I would rate it as one of the best aircrafts in terms of the situational awareness that it affords to the pilot, in terms of the survivability and the kind of armament it carries. But of course, for a pilot, it is not very easy to learn how to fly that aircraft. It does take time to get used to flying an Apache. But especially if you have to fly it at night. But then if once you get used to it, it's a very, very good aircraft to fly.
Right. And do we have a sufficiently large pool of pilots to fly this?
Yes,
Because the Air Force is
absolutely, Sandeep. As part of our contract,
Yeah.
the some of the pilots were trained in the US only,
Right.
and they went there. Not only the pilots, some engineering officers, technical manpower, they got trained at US, and they all came back. So there's an adequate pool of pilots. Plus, in any case, Indian Air Force is operating them. We can always send our
Right.
people to them for initial training. And once we have this pool, they'll be able to train the next set of pilots, engineers, and the technicians.
Right. How about the HAL Prachand? That's our first dedicated combat helicopter. How would you rate that as
The Prachand is again very, very maneuverable and an agile aircraft, more suited to high altitude flying.
Right.
But the only issue with Prachand, and in fact the Rudras also, is that they are yet to get the anti-tank guided missiles,
Right.
which are about 2 odd years away.
Right.
But then the good part is our own, BDL and DRDO is developing those Helena missiles,
Right.
and as and when they get fitted, they will have their teeth also.
So they have imported missiles for now? Or,
No, they missiles for right now they're not holding these missiles,
Right.
but they have got rockets and gun ammunition with them.
Right.
And as and when the missiles are developed and
Yeah.
given to the armed forces, they will be utilized.
Right. And the third machine, in your favorite, the Rudra, it was called the ALH WSI.
Yeah, WSI.
How would you rate that as a machine?
In fact, the ALH, WSI or the Rudra and Prachand are quite similar.
Right.
The engines are the same. Only the airframe differs.
Yes.
And the seating differs. In Rudra, it is side by side. In
Right.
Prachand, it is tandem seating.
Right.
And the profile of Prachand is slightly narrower,
Right.
so that it can maneuver itself better in the hills. In narrow valleys, it can turn easily.
Right.
While the Rudra, perhaps the radius of turn is a bit more. Otherwise, they're quite similar to fly.
Right.
The armament is also same, and they are very, very similar in design, and gearboxes, engine, everything is the same.
Right.
So Rudra, again, if I were to term it, it's an excellent aircraft to fly, as well as in terms of armament it
Right.
carries.
Did a lot of Army Aviation Corps inputs go into the design of the Prachand? Because it was a post-Kargil
Correct.
requirement.
Yes. In fact, the whole design of Prachand has been pushed by the Air Force and the Army.
Right.
People who've been flying Rudras, and we have a large pool of test pilots also,
Right.
who've been operating along with HAL
Yes.
when the designing was on. So
Right.
a lot of features which are there today have been insisted upon by the armed forces, and they have been given in the aircraft.
Right. So, how do you see the situation now post Sindoor? You had a big shake-up right now, and we came out on tops. Do you see Sindoor being a defining moment in the way armed hepters would be used? Though they were not used in combat, but I'm sure they were ready to, strike if the call was given. But do you see any big positive lessons for you, as a good helicopter pilot and an arty man as well? So, what are the lessons for you from Op Sindoor?
See, Op Sindoor has, of course, as you said very rightly, it's been a defining moment in terms of, the way warfare has evolved today.
Right.
And today, things like electronic warfare, cyber warfare, drone warfare, where autonomous, items are used for warfare, the things have totally changed. And to that end, I will just limit myself to the helicopter operations. One thing which comes out very, very clearly is there are going to be so many large users of the airspace, including
Right.
drones and all.
Right.
One thing which needs categorically, looking into is the airspace management.
Right.
Because when you have helicopters operating, up to 1,000 feet, above that fixed wings are flying, artillery shelling is going on, aircrafts are flying, and a large number of drones are flying.
Right.
And even infantry battalions are operating drones.
Right.
Then they are the bigger ones. So there is one specific thing which really needs to be catered for
Airspace
is the airspace management, so that there is no fratricide,
Right.
and people are not, milling into each other when operations are
Right.
on.
That's going to be really important.
It's a very, very important thing, and I'm sure large SOPs are already in place,
Right.
but I feel some more need to be evolved in terms of the changing concepts of warfare.
Absolutely. And, while on the changing concepts of warfare, when the requirement for the Apaches was projected by the Indian Armed Forces, drones were still in the recce element, right? I mean, the RT, the core of RT was using
Yes.
them for spotters, what
Correct.
you did in the good old days with aircraft. But now, Russia-Ukraine war, drone warfare is here to stay. It's changed the way wars are being fought. Do you see, with the kind of combat drones that are being used by even infantry units, which now have the capabilities to strike far greater distances than earlier on, that a lot of the your tasking for close air support would be reduced, and you could then do other things with hepters.
I totally agree with you. And see, what is going to happen is a large number of tasks, and drones are very, very cost effective. They
Right.
don't cost much.
Right.
And so the close air support could be taken over by drones. But then, having said that, the requirement of attack helicopters or
Yes.
any such platforms would always be there.
Right.
To my mind, what we should start looking at is unmanned teaming now.
Right.
There are helicopters today. You can launch drones from helicopters,
Right.
and those drones can be navigated or controlled by the helicopter pilot himself.
Oh,
So
right,
this
right.
is the kind of technology evolution which is going to take place.
Right.
So just imagine there is an armed helicopter flying.
Yes.
He's got drones loaded inside,
Right.
and he launches them and then he controls them. So instead of a person who was on ground,
Yes.
you have already got an aircraft which is 20 kilometers inside the enemy territory, and from there you're launching drones and taking pot shots at the enemy.
So manned unmanned teaming,
Yes.
like the Air Force talks
Absolutely.
about with a
So this
fixed
is
wing.
Fixed wing. So
Right.
similar things can be done with helicopters.
With hepters.
So
Is this in the?
it is
in the
already there in
pipeline?
the pipeline.
Yes, you're
And
talking about.
I'm sure in a couple of years from now we would be doing it practically also.
Right.
So the requirement would of all the platforms would remain.
Right.
What is required is to understand the dynamics and the way we need to utilize them.
Right.
So it is the mental mobility which is the answer and nothing else. So the
Absolutely.
platforms can be there, but people
Right.
have to be mentally mobile as to how to use them.
Right. So, and there are other concepts like you mentioned that this contested airspaces and the fact is to deconflict airspaces, identification of friend and foe is really important. But there have been other concepts that have come in, like drone enabled maneuver warfare is being spoken about. There's this concept of the air littoral which is being spoken
Correct.
about. So how do you see this now? Air power coming in, the armed hepters operating with the drones. You see a requirement for a new doctrine completely with the way things are moving. Technology is
Yes,
leaping ahead.
in fact, this is the call of the hour. We need
Right.
to, evolve new doctrines,
Yes.
have new SOPs, new policies in terms of warfare fighting.
Yes.
So that, like a small example of airspace management I
Right.
gave you, it is perhaps a subset of such doctrines only. Because if you do not have these kind of doctrines, because things like electromagnetic spectrum utilization, cyber attacks, GPS jamming, all these
Right.
things are going to take place. So we need to evolve and have doctrines which support this kind of warfare and the
Right.
new concept of warfare. And that has been amply demonstrated in Op Sindoor. And there, I think everything went off very well. But perhaps if the airspace is contested a bit more,
Yes.
we need to have some more robust doctrines in place. And towards that end, I think theaterization, jointmanship, these are the
Right.
answers. And the armed forces are pushing hard. And I'm sure in times to come, that will also happen. Once that happens, wherein each service understands the other service in a
Right.
better manner, the doctrines which are made, they would be, executed in a better manner.
Right.
Right now, when things are happening, in separate canvases,
Yes.
the doctrine may be there, but people do not understand because they do not operate together.
Right.
So the key lies in operating together, similar environment, having theater commands wherein people understand each other better and
Right.
speak the same language at all levels.
Right. Absolutely. Very well put, General Suri. And that concept. How do you prove these concepts on the ground? Like, creating theater commands is one thing. That's QED. But then, how do you get them into the field? How do you,
Absolutely,
run those exercises? How long do you think it is going to be before you actually stabilize these theater commands? Uh, give us an idea of, in terms of years, how many exercises would it take to
See,
figure this
it'll
out?
take at least about 4 to 5 years to stabilize.
Right.
From the time the theater commands are established, it'll take that much time for things to be absolutely established. But even in that period, I'm sure it is not that things will not be good, but it's
Right.
just that a bit more needs to be done before things, actually stabilize to that last man, last, the junior most man in these forces when he understands what
Right.
the concept of warfare in a theater command
Right,
is.
absolutely. So 5 years is a good time,
Yes.
you think, to
Yes.
stabilize these theater commands. And coming back to the Army Aviation Corps, um, I remember seeing this interview of yours where you said that it would grow from about 400 machines now, rotary winged assets, to about 700 by the next decade.
Correct.
Does that take into account the fact that you have combat drones coming in a big way, and you possibly can, cut down a few numbers? Or does this also include the fact that you will have drones and, manned hepters side by side?
In fact, about 4 5 years back, when the decision was taken to shift all the remotely piloted aircraft
Right.
systems, that is RPS, to
RPS,
Army Aviation
right.
from artillery, the things have evolved at that front also.
Right.
Today, Army Aviation, besides holding helicopters, is operating, manning, and maintaining all the RPAs that the
Right.
Indian Army is holding. And some more are likely to come. Like we all read a couple of weeks back, the AON was granted for some
yes.
87 more RPAs for the armed forces.
Right. Right.
So some numbers are for the army also, air force as well as navy. And but with these RPAs coming in,
Yes.
the numbers of helicopters, to my mind, will not reduce because the roles are starkly different.
Right.
And once the roles are different and we know what each one is to perform,
Right.
the numbers of helicopters are going to increase only, because to support the ground formations
Yes.
and ground troops which are there, these many numbers are going to be required in times to
Right,
come.
and of course the diverse terrain that you operate
Absolutely.
in, from the ground level to
Yeah,
sea level,
to
from sea
Siachen,
level to
absolutely.
Siachen,
To Siachen,
that's about
yeah.
what, 18,000 feet,
20,000 feet.
20,000 feet,
In
of
fact,
course.
that is our cheetahs today
Yeah.
are operating at altitudes and including ALHs at
Right.
up to 20,000 feet.
Right. So the cheetah is I think I've been seeing it forever, and it's been given life extension after life extension. When do you see the cheetah? It's the backbone
yes.
of the Army Aviation.
In fact, just about last week, Army has issued another RFI for replacing
helicopters.
these light helicopters, cheetahs.
Yes.
And even prior to that, the LUH
Right.
has already been shortlisted to replace some numbers,
Yes.
some 100 plus numbers of cheetahs that the Army is holding, and balance by this RFI, which has been taken out now.
Right.
And I'm sure they would get replaced.
Right.
But even at a good pace,
Yes.
and if all contracts get signed, I still see all the cheetahs getting replaced in not less than 10 to 12 years from
Right.
now, which is a huge amount of time period.
Yes.
And some of the cheetahs have already crossed 40 years of life.
Right.
Some are even touching 50 years.
Right.
And any aircraft is not, should not be flying after about 30 to 40
Yes.
years.
Yes.
That
Of
is the
course.
normal life span of
Right.
a flying platform. But having said that, today Cheetah is the backbone of
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Indian Army, and they're doing yeoman service, especially in the glacier,
Right.
where it is so difficult to even trudge 100 meters.
Right.
The cheetahs are the lifeline over there.
Oh, absolutely. And they are, like you mentioned, the backbone of the Army Aviation Corps. But I have to ask you this one question, General Suri, and of course, you might probably get a lot of calls from your friends in the Air Force. And this is a question I'm sure you've been asked several times. Do you see the Army Aviation Corps ever operating fixed-wing aircraft?
If I go back into time, there was a proposal to
Yes.
get fixed wings into the Army Aviation Corps.
Right.
But as I see it now, I do not think fixed wing fleet
Right.
will ever come to Army Aviation.
Not
And
even close air support
Not
missions.
even for close air support. It will be only helicopters.
Right.
And of course, the RPAs are going to continue.
Right.
Because the role, the way army and the way the warfare is evolving today,
Right.
I don't visualize the fixed wings coming to the army aviation.
Right. It was considered at what time?
It was considered about, say, 10 to 15 years back,
Right.
that army aviation must have its own fleet of fixed wing flights,
Right.
say at the scale of one per command.
Right.
But about 4-5 years back, then it was shelved, and hereafter, I don't think, unless things change drastically, I don't visualize a fixed wing fleet coming to army
Right.
aviation.
I think your Air Force friends will be very delighted to hear that. There was always that inter-service tussle.
Yeah, but that is good professional tussle, and I'm sure it leads to better results.
Right, absolutely. And you think that this the theaterization mantra now, which is now literally going to happen in a few months from now, we are told, is the reason that now you've stopped this inter-service rivalry, that I'll operate fixed wing.
Correct.
You can't operate it.
I agree with that. That is one reason why it would have happened. But then this theaterization is going to help in a large way, wherein people start thinking also in a joint manner.
Right.
One thing is to have, as you said, the theater commands on paper, have appointments.
Right.
But more importantly, people have to think like that.
That's a
that
very
we have to
interesting
operate
point.
together. And we have to operate in a joint manner. And that is when the actual ethos of theaterization will seep into the minds of people.
No, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. And that was going to be my question as well, about the ConOps. How do you get different services to operate together? It's one thing creating commands. Like you said, it would take about 5 years to get the Army and the Air Force to operate together in that air-land battle scenario. But how would you put this ConOps together? Is that being worked upon right now? How seriously is it being looked at?
Oh yes. With the headquarter IDS being there, and the CDS being there with his staff, all these things are being worked out. And I'm sure by the time theaterization does roll out, all the concept of ops also would be in place.
Right.
And thereafter, it's only execution of those concept of ops, and the fact that people start imbibing those concepts into their minds.
Right.
And that is what I think is the bottom line. Once that happens, then to my mind, theaterization is complete.
Right, theaterization is complete. But Operation Sindoor is ongoing even as we speak.
Absolutely.
What is the pressure now on the system, that can you reform, can you create theaters while you're facing an adversary on your western borders? How do you reform under fire? That's a question that I always asked.
It's a very intriguing question, I would say. But then I think under pressure, perhaps things should happen in a faster time frame, rather than go slow and wait for things to get over. I think the pressure would be there to have it at a faster pace.
Right.
And since, I'm not donning my uniform right now, but whatever friends I know, I've spoken to them, I think the writing is on the wall. The sooner, the better.
The sooner, the better. And this is not going to be impeded by...
not going to be impeded by...
active deployments
and
all of that. And how do you see China now? For the longest time, when you were commissioned into the Regiment of Artillery, you had just one adversary on your western border. The northern borders were quiet. Today, you're looking at a two-front situation, literally. You have you have a no war, no peace situation with your western adversary, and you have a tense situation with your northern adversary. So this twin front operation requirement that is there, I mean, how bad have things become now? Would you require a complete reorientation of the way we look at our defense to fight a two-front war?
To be, truthful, in fact, the reorientation started about 3-4 years back.
With Galwan
and even prior to that.
2020.
Even prior to that, the way, the say to start point was the raising of 17 Corps.
Right.
And for the northern borders, the Strike Corps. And similarly, the way formations have been raised, and more importantly, the way infrastructure has started coming up.
Right.
And in fact, I was lucky. I traveled across the entire eastern Ladakh, both by Heptar as well as by road.
Right.
And as well as I went to Arunachal also, right up to the LAC. Right. And I was pleasantly surprised to see the way infrastructure is coming up.
Right.
So as far as the orientation is concerned, it is already there. And I'm sure it's only going to improve with each passing year. The number of troops on ground, the platforms which are there, the formations, the equipment which is there, and the kind of high-tech equipment, drones, tanks have already reached there.
Right.
Drones are there, aircrafts are there, roads are coming up, airfields are coming up. So, to my mind, the orientation has taken place, and it is the armed forces are well poised to face the adversary on the northern borders.
Right. Armed forces are well poised to face our adversary on the northern borders. Heartening words from you, General Suri. But thank you for your time and your thoughts. It's been such a fascinating conversation.
Oh, thank you very much, Sandeep. And it's been excellent being on your program. And I always would, end by saying that I would love to wish happy landings to all the Army waiters as and when, wherever they are up in the air. And may the Corps grow from strength to strength.
Happy
Thank you very much,
landings.
Sandeep.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, General Suri.